The Holocaust Memorial Day Trust classifies the 10 stages of genocide as classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, extermination, and denial. And it would appear as though some parts of the US are almost at stage 8. Hello, and welcome to Orange Wave, the series where we discuss progressive news, culture, and all things relating to the NDP. I am your host, Will Adams, and today we're going to be talking about some disturbing stuff happening in the United States of America. Now, normally I don't discuss United States politics because, as a Canadian citizen, I think it's best to stay in my lane and talk about politics I understand. However, as the media in the United States isn't talking about this at all, and the fact that I created this whole show to spread awareness about this kind of thing, I feel sort of an obligation to talk about it, and besides, it's my show, I'll talk about whatever the fuck I want, so I'm going to talk about it. So for those who might be unaware of the situation, back in 2022, there was a situation in Florida where the governor of Florida was creating a law, the so-called Parental Rights in Education Bill. It was a law that would prohibit talks about sexual orientation and gender identity in grades pre-K through 3. It came into the fold because a little-known company called Disney ended up pulling government funding for the government of Florida. And then Ron DeSantis went on this whole tirade of stripping Disney of self-governing status that they ended up acquiring because of the amount of money that the government of Florida owes Disney, the company, for the amount of tourist attractions that Disney gives them. Something that could ramp up Florida tax dollars to into the thousands of extra. Even members of the Republican Party, such as Kevin McCarthy and the known pedophile Matt Gaetz, have criticized Ron DeSantis and his whole gun-ho thing with Disney. This was discussed by left-wing media sources for like 2 weeks, and that was about it. The right-wing establishment media, however, ran with DeSantis' Trumpism agenda and used it to push the agenda that abusing trans kids is a parental right, and how the feelings of trans kids do not actually matter. You know, all that kind of stuff. Crazy rhetorical bullshit, like, if you are a trans woman, you should be using the fucking men's room. Which, that's a problem, because when you make people use the bathroom depending on chromosomes, you will have a fully transitioned man who is 6 feet tall, who's muscular and has a beard, but because he has XX chromosomes, the government is going to decide that he needs to use the woman's washroom. It doesn't matter what the law says. Anyone who sees something like that happen, sees a cop trying to force a man to use the woman's washroom, or vice versa, they're going to look at you like you're fucking insane. That's a part of the problem. Ron DeSantis pushes that agenda, and just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, it got worse. And whenever the media says that you're over-exaggerating something, do not believe them. You're never over-exaggerating. You're always spreading reasonable concern. So, basically, it's all just a hate crime waiting to happen. An attack waiting to happen. An innocent person getting killed for no reason waiting to happen. But don't worry, we will get to that later in the episode. Right now, we need to put it into perspective by discussing a disturbing and, quite frankly, sickening new bill that has been passed in Florida relating to the subject matter. So, the bill in question is called SB 254, and it is a Senate bill, and its focus is on treatments for sex reassignment, as it says on the Florida Senate website. I'm about to read this to you right now. Treatments for sex reassignment, granting courts of this state temporary emergency jurisdiction over a child present in this state if the child has been subjected or is threatened with being subjected to sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures, providing that for the purpose of warrants to take physical custody of a child in certain child custody enforcement proceedings. Serious physical harm to the child includes, but is not limited to, being subjected to sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures, prohibiting certain public entities from expending state funds for the provision of sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures, prohibiting sex reassignment prescriptions and procedures for patients younger than 18 years of age, for requiring the department to immediately suspend the license of a healthcare practitioner who is arrested for committing or attempting soliciting or conspiring to commit specified violations relating to sex reassignment prescriptions or procedures for a patient younger than 18 years of age, etc. This bill has unfortunately passed, and it does leave a lot to speculation. But there is a lot that can be confirmed about this bill's passing purely by how it's worded. For a start, if you are a healthcare provider and you're giving life-saving healthcare to transgender youth, you will then be arrested and have your license revoked for doing your job. If you have a situation where two parents are divorced and one is abusive and bullies their kid for being trans and the other one is actually a good parent and supports their kid, it means that not only the state can come and fucking kidnap your child, it also means that if said transphobic parent comes and does it themselves, which has happened to trans youth before on many occasions, I might add, the state is fine with that. So basically, providing life-saving healthcare to trans youth is now illegal, and being a supportive parent is also illegal. So much for fucking parental rights, huh? If you somehow don't believe that that's Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' intentions with all this, I'm going to give you the misfortune of listening to a press conference where he says directly as such, and he just spreads rhetoric. Here, take a listen.
Which is ensuring women's safety, making sure that educational institutions, detention facilities, correctional institutes, juvenile facilities, and public buildings with a restroom, locker room, or changing facility, that they must have separate facilities for men and women based on biological sex. A woman should not be in a locker room having to worry about someone from the opposite sex being in their locker room. And it's happening with athletics, with our girl athletes and women athletes, also with some of these other things, whether it's a prison situation, whether it's just these restrooms. We want to make sure that our girls and our women are protected. And so this bill does that and makes sure that they're not going to be exposed to situations that are not in their best interest.
Before continuing, the state of Florida made two new laws as well. One, they have made a law saying that if you commit sex crimes against children, you should be put to death via lethal injection. At first, that sounds pretty good, right? Of course it doesn't. That's because Ronald McDonald knows how to make all of this even worse. He also ended up passing a law saying that drag in front of children is a sex crime against children. Now, here's the thing. He doesn't actually specify in that what drag is. His law doesn't specify what drag is. So you're going to have situations where a trans woman or trans man just exists in public, just exists. And they have it declared that they are doing drag in front of children because of the fact that they are expressing themselves in a way that they feel comfortable, and then they end up getting put to death. That's the inevitable danger that you get put into in these situations where vague laws are written. When vague laws are written, it leaves anything open to interpretation, and thus corruption is inevitable. I need to make a case here. If you sit there and you say that a trans woman is of risk to the other women in a washroom, you are inherently sexualizing that person. And in the context of schools, if you say that a 14-year-old trans girl is of risk to the other girls in the washroom, you are sexualizing a child. You are subjecting your weird, conjured-up conspiracy fetish onto a child, and you should be kept a certain amount of kilometers or feet from a school. I don't know why it's controversial to say so. I don't know when it became acceptable to say this kind of shit, but it's not acceptable to say this kind of shit, and I will die on this hill. We're seeing a lot of conservatives right now trying to downplay or justify this right now, saying that it isn't an attempt at genocide and that laws like this aren't an attempt at genocide. They're full of shit. Anyone who's saying that is full of shit, and it can be proven if you just look at a history book of Germany in the 30s. It didn't start with gas chambers, and it didn't start with killings. It started with us, them rhetoric in the media. It started with separating people from one another and isolating them. That's what they're doing right now. It is a distinct push towards genocide against the LGBT plus community, particularly against the transgender community. You think Joe Biden has the trans community's backs? Think again. He decided not that long ago that schools barring trans kids from playing in school sports, he decided that that is, quote, something that should be negotiated. You should not be negotiating your rights. Trans people are not negotiable. They are people who actually exist, and the fact that the president decided such a reckless and idiotic thing proves that he is not the ally to the trans community that we initially thought he was. And with the fact that he is kind of using this as more of a wedge issue, if anything at all, and the fact that he contributes to the establishment problem, the fact that he's running for president of America again, that's not a great thing. Like, he's better than Donald Trump, but he's not that great himself. He needs to step aside and let someone younger and someone who can actually commit to taking action run. Beto O'Rourke, why don't we let him run? Or someone like him run. Younger, someone who has vision, someone who isn't a part of the establishment already. Why don't we let them run? My point here is that it's going to get a hell of a lot worse before it gets any better. This is an uphill battle. Everyone who does seem to care is putting all the blame on the state of Florida right now, while also forgetting that the country itself is allowing all of this to happen to begin with. Joe Biden is complacent in all of this for not doing anything about it. Anyone that hasn't taken action is complacent in this. The people who elected Ronald McDonald to begin with are complacent in this. That's how genocides have always happened throughout history. They wrap something in a sensationalist lens, and people either buy it or ignore it. I'm going to wrap this up and make this come full circle. Canada has a part that we need to play here. Trumpism is on the rise here. And as we've seen demonstrated to us over in the United States, it is just a stepping stone to get to fascism, which we've seen in Florida. Canada needs to stop it in its tracks. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, needs to allow U.S. citizens to claim asylum in Canada if they are at risk by any state laws. It's a very grim reality, but it's time that we take action and stop this horrid ideology while we still can. Thank you for listening to this episode of Orange Wave. I am your host, Will Adams. I hope you have an amazing day, and remember, Jagmeet Singh loves you.